I'd probably run for president of the southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
Well, it's finally happening. Drone delivery here in the States. Well, maybe anyway. Amazon is going to begin testing new delivery drones here in the United States. So last month, according to Gizmag, it emerged that the Federal Aviation Administration had granted Amazon permission to begin testing a delivery drone prototype for its Prime Air service, a venture that aims to transport packages to Amazon customers in under 30 minutes. But there was a hitch. While the company, since revealing the vehicle cleared for use, had already become obsolete. So things are now back on track with the FAA giving Amazon the green light to put its current models to the test. So the problem here is that the FAA took so long to finally allow the drones that it's not actually the current model. So now we don't have any sort of modern, up-to-date drone that's been approved by the FAA. So now our problem is that the FAA is just so behind the times that they're totally irrelevant when it comes to drones. Amazon first took steps to win the blessing of the authorities back in July of last year when it petitioned the FAA for permission to begin testing its drones. But the agency's response was way too slow, finally granting an experimental airworthiness certificate to Amazon in March of this year. The slow progress, partnered with the now evident worthlessness of the permit, prompted Amazon to carry out testing of its more sophisticated drones in other countries, namely at a secret Canadian site only 2,000 feet from the U.S. border. Now, that's sort of to add insult to injury, because the United States is just so far behind with its regulation on these different things. You see, that's our main problem that's hampering us in so many ways, is regulation. And, you know, I've heard people say, oh, you know, you ought to run for office and such and such. The problem is, if, you know, I was old enough, I suddenly turned 35 and I'm old enough to run for office, and I ran for, let's say I run for president and I win, I would immediately try to get rid of the office of president. I would say there should be no president. No one man should have that much power. And I would try to get rid of the office. And I would fire all of my cabinet, and I would say, we're not going to go to war anymore either. And I would pass a bunch of executive orders that negated all the previously made executive orders. And that would be it. I would resign immediately. So I would pass an executive order saying that the president is no longer a relevant thing and that there shouldn't be one. And a democracy, a more direct democracy, is really the only way to do things on a large scale with a huge state like this. See you later. So really the argument that, well, Congress should fix things, it really doesn't work, because Congress is not going to fix things with regulation. They're not going to deregulate drones anytime soon, most likely anyway, unless there's somebody with enough money to throw at them to regulate drones. For some odd reason, the FAA thinks that the best thing to do is to regulate drones as tightly as possible to ensure that they're not going to be used for terroristic purposes or whatever. You have to get a special kind of permission to fly a drone for commercial purposes, which is, of course, the government stepping on the free market as it usually does. Now, why is this going on? Well, probably the main reason this is going on is because there's some form of special regulation that they're working on rolling out, and there's some lobbyists who are drafting it as we speak. So they want to put the actual innovation in the regards to the drone industry sort of on the back burner until this can happen. So that's probably what's going on. There's going to be some sweeping regulation that's going to encompass all of dronedom, and they're going to petition the UN to pass some sort of drone regulation treaty or whatever. Well, by the way of a letter to Paul Missner, Amazon's Vice President of Global Public Policy, on Wednesday of April the 8th, the FAA has granted the company's request for exemption. This will clear the way for Amazon to begin testing its drones outdoors here in the States. The exemption dictates that Amazon's drones fly no higher than 400 feet, no faster than 100 miles per hour, and remain within the pilot's line of sight, among a raft of other conditions relating to safety and maintenance. These rules are consistent with a set of proposed guidelines around commercial drone flight that the FAA floated in the year. Now, this means that delivery from drones from Amazon has just been made basically impossible by this regulation, which the FAA has put forward, saying that it has to stay within the line of sight of the operator. So then that means that they can't be triggered via GPS and steered that way. They just can't under this new regulation. So they have to stay within the line of sight of the pilot. That means that there's no delivering to anybody unless the pilot is standing on a very high tower and can see the drone and has binoculars and all that sort of thing. So while it marks another step towards the realization of Amazon's ambitious drone delivery plan, there's still a long way to go before quadcopters are dropping parcels in your front yard, unfortunately. Most obvious obstacle that Amazon faces now is convincing the FAA that drones can be safely flown beyond the line of sight. That, or it resorts to delivering packages only to buildings and people within a few hundred meters of its own warehouses, which is pretty unlikely. Ultimately, Amazon hopes to operate in a slice of airspace above 200 feet and beneath 500 feet where general aviation begins. It plans to shoot autonomous drones along a 10-mile or 16 kilometers long skyway at 50 miles per hour with packages weighing up to 55 pounds in tow. So let's put this into some perspective. I ordered a CD the other day. Yeah, a compact disc, an audio compact disc that has music on it. You may say, oh, that's so old school. Why'd you do that? Well, I have a sound system that kind of requires me to use CDs if I want the highest quality I can get. And I actually really like the sound system. I built it myself, so I'm using CDs. But so I ordered this CD, and if you're wondering, it's Rhythm of the Night by Corona, which is an excellent Eurodance track. But I actually ordered the whole album. Now, it was supposed to get here last week, but it didn't because who knows? Maybe the weather over there is pretty bad. Well, what if we had a system of drones that could deliver my package for me in a much more timely manner as the crow flies instead of waiting for the Postal Service to deliver it? Now, I'm not going to knock the Postal Service because as it stands, the Postal Service actually does do kind of an okay job. I couldn't do it better. And the UPS really doesn't have the infrastructure to do it better, neither does FedEx. So as it is right now, the best option for delivering packages a lot of the time actually is the Postal Service. So it would be really, really funny. I was just thinking it'd be really funny if the Postal Service was granted permission to use commercial drones to fly around packages, but not Amazon. So the only entity which could deliver packages would be the Postal Service. And that would be actually really funny. And I would not be surprised at all if something like that happened, because it's just something that seems like would happen here in the States. It's becoming more and more apparent that as a nation, we are very bad at running ourselves when it comes to regulatory things, when it comes to ensuring that there's continuity between two different things. There's always some hiccup. Always something goes wrong with how the country is being run. And it seems like we should just stop running the country. You know, we have this problem where people think, well, there has to be somebody in charge. But why? You know, people keep referring to that. Oh, there has to be somebody in charge. Who would be in charge of this or that? Why does there need to be anybody in charge? You're wanting to give up all this authority to somebody else. Why does there need to be anybody in charge of this whole regulatory nonsense? Just let Amazon do what they're going to do. If Amazon flies a drone into a plane and kills a bunch of people, then guess what? Amazon's going to get sued by Boeing, by Southwest Airlines, by the families of those involved, all sorts of different things. So just let Amazon do what Amazon is going to do. You know, there's no need for all this regulation to keep Amazon in check. There's really a great harm now being done to those of us who want these drones delivered to our door or want these packages delivered via drone to our door. I can't have what I want now because of government regulation. And the end object that I want doesn't harm anybody. It's not like I want meth to be made legal now because I want meth, where there could be pretty good arguments against the legalization of meth, which I could understand, although disagree with. But we're talking about, I want commercial delivery via drone to be legal, and they can't allow that for some reason. Think of all the different things that this would help. Think of all the different massive industry that this would create. This would create a huge industry for delivery, create a huge industry for filmmaking via drone. But all sorts of things would be changed if we could just let drones fly around as they're going to, governed by the companies and not by the FAA. Because, again, if a drone flies into a plane and causes harm, guess what? The operator of that drone or the company governing the operator of that drone is going to get sued, and they're going to get sued bad. So really, there's no sense in keeping this ridiculous legislation the way it is. It's just silly. But you're asking for Congress to basically not do their job when you're talking about regulators. That's the problem here. Because when we're talking about a national scale, we're talking about, or even on a state scale, or even on a town scale, for some odd reason, the city council or the lawmakers in this particular region always want to do their job. And I really wish they would just stop. Because their job, they see it anyway, their job is to make new laws. We have to keep making new laws. We need to pass common sense regulation. It's always the common sense regulation. After all, think about the kids. So let's say that there's a horrible instance of somebody carrying a gun, which he purchased in a private sale, into a restaurant and shooting 3 people, one of which was somebody under the age of 18. Well, he's 17 maybe. Okay, so now there needs to be a new law governing the carrying of firearms into restaurants, and there needs to be a law against the shooting of somebody under the age of 18 where there's increased penalties, and private sales need to be filed with the NRA, or not the NRA, pardon me, not the DEA, the ATF, the BATFE, all of my favorite things in one, and they need to have some special letters which are written to the BATFE to ensure that their private sale is indexed in some government index or whatever. You see, this just creates a whole bunch of problems. The reactionary response to any form of horrible accident or horrible incident is to pass more laws to stop this from happening, even though it doesn't really work. It just doesn't. Laws don't really prevent crimes from happening. They just create more crimes. That's kind of the problem that we have here. Murder is a crime. The implement with which you use to commit a murder doesn't really matter. What matters is that a murder was committed. It doesn't matter if I used an AR-15 or if I used a .357 handgun, 357 revolver that was passed down from my grandfather. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is somebody died, and somebody should be sent to prison for that, or, in a better world, executed for that. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way here, where instead people say, well, we need to pass more laws. The solution to the problem is law and the rule of law, which is something that these people hold in much too high a regard, I think. You'll notice that it's always the lawmakers who are going on and on and on about rule of law. I want my rule of law. What about rule of law? You need to respect rule of law. Give you an example, my favorite example. Edward Snowden, when he fled the country, and he was going to go to Ecuador, but his flight got canceled and his passport was pulled. So he ended up in Russia against his wishes. He didn't want to be in Russia. And so there were a bunch of U.S. Lawmakers, senators, congressmen saying that Edward Snowden needs to respect rule of law and come back to the United States to face a trial. Well, here's the problem. Edward Snowden, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden, he may have broken the law. Sure, probably. But the problem is he did the right thing. Yeah, maybe he broke the law, but he did do the right thing. So there's no question he would be found guilty of breaking the law. He goes before a military crimes tribunal or before a court martial or before a federal judge. I don't know how the particular trial would go about because he's a contractor, I'm not sure. But he would go before some sort of magistrate, and a judge would say, I find you guilty of such and such, or the jury would find him guilty of whatever it is he's supposed to have done. I think espionage and treason. And then if treason, he'd be sentenced to death, despite having done the right thing. The problem is that the rule of law doesn't really respect the correct people. Rule of law in this country seems to respect way too much the people who are in so-called power, who actually work for us. You see, that was the whole problem that I think a lot of people didn't even recognize with the NSA leaks, is that this is a crime against the people, not a crime against the federal government or whatever. This is a crime against the people, which has been perpetrated by the government. So somebody finally calls it out and the government gets mad. What do you expect? The government gets called out as being full of liars and full of people who are going to mislead you about their true intentions. And so this person who called this stuff out obviously must be stopped. You see, that's the problem. That's why rule of law is totally broken in this country and really doesn't actually mean a whole lot to me. Because you keep talking about, what about rule of law? Edward Snowden should face the consequences for what he did. the consequences for what he did would be unjust punishment. So obviously he's not going to pony up to rule of law, whatever that is in this country, whatever that means here. And it's not just this country. I'm not beating up on the United States by any means. The rule of law in many countries around the world is just totally broken because it values politicians and values those who are in so-called power much more than it values the actual people who are supposed to be in power, which is the residents, which are the residents of that particular nation, not the representatives, because representatives are obviously supposed to represent the people, but guarantee you they don't actually. Well, anyway, competition is something which I value quite greatly, quite dearly. Competition is something which is near and dear to my heart. And Google Fiber is actually creating quite a lot of competition. You see, Google Fiber is the service which gives you gigabit internet speeds thanks to Google, our good friends over at Google. Well, Google Fiber is expanding, and Time Warner Cable is, in response, making their speeds 6 times faster. So with Google Fiber preparing an expansion into Charlotte, North Carolina, incumbent cable operator Time Warner Cable is trying to hold on to customers by dramatically changing and increasing internet speeds at no extra charge. See, competition. The problem was, in a lot of these areas, you had cable companies which were just totally nuts. You had cable companies which were doing absolutely the wrong thing almost all the time, and cable companies were just doing the bad thing, and they were exploiting their customers. This is bad. So, as a solution, Google comes in, and Google is offering a alternative to these companies, to Time Warner Cable, to whatever. So this now means that there's competition, which is what there should have been in the first place. So what caused there to be this lack of competition? Well, 2 main things. On the one hand, you had the companies which were sort of buying up shares in the federal market, buying up shares in the local community, I guess you might say, by buying out the buying out the city councils and such, and saying, give us tax breaks and we'll build here, and make it so that the laws are so convoluted regarding different carriers that really only we can be in this particular market. And that's kind of what happened. And the other problem was that the city councils just went with it. So those are 2 big problems. Is government in bed with companies and companies in bed with government, which should not happen. There must be separation there, because companies working with government means an unfair marketplace and tax breaks and all that sort of thing. It just doesn't really work. It's not really a free market if the government is involved, because then it's not free, it's governed. So anyway, the internet transformation will begin this summer and will include speed increases on Time Warner Cable's residential internet plans at no additional cost, with customers experiencing increases up to 6 times faster depending on their current level of internet service, says Time Warner Cable. For example, customers who subscribe to standard, formerly up to 15 megabits per second, will now receive up to 50 megabits per second. Customers who subscribe to extreme, formerly 30, will now receive up to 200. And customers who subscribe to ultimate, formerly up to 50, will receive up to 300 megabits per second at no extra charge. Google announced plans to enter Charlotte and a few other metro areas in January, and is working with local officials to finalize the network design so that construction can begin. Now, I've heard tell that Google is also moving its way into the South, not just in Charlotte, moving its way into the South by moving into Atlanta and possibly Knoxville. Maybe someday we'll see Google Fiber in Chattanooga and Dunlap in South Pittsburgh, but not right now. See, that's the problem. Competition is necessary for a good free market, because competition now means that you have this company which is offering one service and this company which is offering another service. And yeah, company A can buy out company B, and that's fine. If it's the most lucrative thing to happen, yeah, that's fine to happen. The problem is when government comes in and says, we like this company better, or this company is the most fair, or this company is going to get tax breaks for whatever reason because some senator is also on the board. See, that's the main problem. That's the big problem with really the whole system of having senators and representatives, is that they're going to act in ultimately their own best interests by voting in whatever is the most favorable for their own company. Plus, they get tons and tons of money from all these different companies, which leads to, guess what? Crony capitalism, leads to cronyism, leads to a controlled economy, controlled capitalism, which is not really very free market. Now, fortunately, there's tons of subversive ways to keep on going with the free market, where you don't have to go necessarily through official channels. But it would be nice if the free market was the most accepted thing in whatever community you may reside in. And hopefully someday that will be the norm for us here in the States, is just the free market and very little, in fact, no government intervention. That would be the ideal here in our area, here in Chattanooga, here in the South.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? Just think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble, just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great, supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk Radio, 910, 1190, and 1240 AM.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240. Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pam Puso. Senator Marco Rubio is running for president. The announcement from the Florida Republican during a conference call with his biggest backers. Later today, he'll rally in Miami.
He will make a strong case for foreign policy. His heritage, his background, his perspective on worldviews is mainstream conservative hawk.
Fox's Carl Cameron. Hillary Clinton, who's also in, is on the move to Iowa. A deadly shooting on a college campus.
One person is dead following a shooting at Wayne Community College in Goldsboro, North Carolina, about an hour southeast of Raleigh. Police are hunting for the gunman, said to be a white male, 5'11", with a tattoo over his eye.
Fox News video Eden Brown. Another day of deliberations for the jury in the Aaron Hernandez trial. The former New England Patriot is accused of gunning down a friend in 2013. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You should film cops. These are some words which make people upset, and they shouldn't. You should film cops. Now, that doesn't mean you should kick down their door and film them while they're in the restroom, no. But you should film them when they're on duty. Now, this isn't because cops are bad people, per se. This isn't because the police are always going to do the wrong thing. Certainly, I'm sure many lives have been actually saved by the police. And this is a good thing. It's good people acting in a positive way. However, there should be a manner of accountability going on here. We're talking about people who are our employees, after all. Think about it this way. If a business set up a security camera in the lobby of their business, and there's, the businessman decides, I'm going to put up a security camera in the lobby of my business just to keep an eye on things and make sure everything's okay, and, the secretary decides to steal some paper clips, I'll notice, as an aside. So the secretary would get all mad and say, oh, you can't put up cameras. Well, you're fired then if you don't like me putting cameras in my own business. And that's sort of what's happening here is imagine the entirety of the city of Chattanooga, for instance, with the CPD is your business in a sense. And the police officers are your employees, your security guards maybe, who somebody else maybe above you in the chain of things has hired them, but they still do work for you. Now, that's sort of what's going on here. And as such, their actions in an official capacity should be monitored, should be filmed. Well, they don't really like that, or rather, some of them don't really like that. A man who is filming a cop killing a fleeing suspect says that an officer's, quote, told me to stop. So footage led to murder charges and rekindled the debate about the right to record, which of course you do have. You have a right to film the police while they're acting in an official capacity, especially if they're arresting somebody. You should film them. So 23-year-old South Carolina man who used his phone to videotape a police officer fatally shooting a suspect in the back multiple times, we're all familiar with that case, said Thursday that another officer arrived on the scene and ordered him to stop recording. Now, this is something which we would call an unlawful command, which you do not have to follow. If a policeman tells you to do something which would violate your rights, you do not have to do that. That is something which is an unlawful command. And unlawful commands have sort of become something which have been forgotten about. People say, well, you have to do what police say no matter what. Well, that's actually not true. Now, of course, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in any official capacity whatsoever, and I don't even have a college degree. Take from that what you will. But I do know that a policeman cannot make me do something which would violate my rights. Well, Feden Santana was walking to work, and he said he stumbled upon a scuffle between the officer and the suspect, and he naturally began filming. That's sort of our natural instinct nowadays, is to whip out our camera whenever something interesting happens. We as people have a want to share. And that's actually kind of a free market idea when you think about it, or rather it plays into the free market when you think about it, because we have a want to share. I have an ability, I want to share it with other people. And of course, I'll get a fair return on that. But if we're talking about filming something which is interesting, which has happened, I want to film that so I can show my friends so they can view something interesting as well. So we have this natural tendency to want to share. Maybe it's to bring attention to ourselves and the cool things that we notice, or maybe it's just because we're good-natured people who want to better other people by showing them the cool things we've seen. Either way, we have a tendency to want to share. Well, Feden Santana was walking to work and he began filming this scuffle. So the 3-minute-long footage was ultimately viewed by millions of people online and on television, although mere seconds of it were shown on TV, because that's how TV is, and paved the way for the arrest and firing of North Charleston police officer Michael Slauger, who is accused of murdering the 50-year-old Walter Scott. So he's now going to be on trial very soon for murder in this particular case. One of the officers told me to stop, he says, but it was because I said to them that what they did, it was an abuse, and I witnessed everything, Santana told CNN. He said the officer also instructed him to stay where he was, but Santana said he left the scene for work because he was not being detained. He was, in fact, free to go, so he left. He was not being accused of any crime, so he was free to go. He did nothing wrong. Santana eventually turned the tape over to the victim's family after what the police were saying about the shooting didn't match what he saw, he said. You see, this is why we need people to film or take video files, I guess, because most of us don't have 16mm video cameras to carry around with us. I know there's some not really controversy, but there's a little bit of argument about what clarifies as or is a camera or not. This is a camera, this is a digital imager, this is a machine which takes a video file, and this is a video camera. There's a bit of a difference, but we'll just call it a video camera for the sake of argument. You're carrying around your video camera and you witness something terrible going on. You want to film it so that there can be proper evidence of what has happened. There needs to be proper evidence of every event which transpires, because if there's not, then the police could say something which is untrue, or the other party could say something which is untrue and sway a jury one way or another. Now, this is not an argument for or against the police. This is just an argument for, I guess, justice, frankly. It's an argument for the telling of the truth. So he says, I felt that my life with this information might be in danger. I thought about erasing the video and just getting it out of the community, Charleston, and living someplace else, Santana told NBC. I knew the cop didn't do the right thing. That tells you something, though. This guy feels so fearful for his life after just taking a video that he's thinking about moving, deleting the video and moving away just for being present the wrong place or right time, or right place and right time, depending on how you want to look at it, because he did take a very useful video. Santana's comments rekindled a debate about the lawfulness of the public recording the police, and they come as Charleston police authorities released dash cam footage of the traffic stop, I should say, leading up to the chase and Scott's death. And this video has been circulated online all over the place. You can find it very easily on YouTube. One title is South Carolina Cop Shoots Unarmed Black Man. You can find it under that title very easily, which is a very descriptive title, I suppose, because it is factual. A policeman did fire upon somebody who was allegedly unarmed, although some say that he was carrying a taser. That is a true statement, and it also is a true statement that he was a black man, unless there's something else going on that we don't know about. So these are all factual statements. That dash cam recording corroborates the officer's statement that Scott fled the scene after Slogger pulled him over for a taillight infraction. But the video captured from Slogger's video doesn't show the ensuing chase or the shooting. So there's no, I guess you say, official video showing the actual slaying. So the dead man's family said Scott may have fled because he had a bench warrant against him regarding unpaid child support payments. So there's no arguing this was a good decision on his part. We all know this was a very poor decision on his part. He panicked and did the wrong thing. But the question now is, does panicking and doing the wrong thing equate to you need to die? And it seems very unlikely that it does. I've panicked and done the wrong thing many times, not to police, but say when you're driving and, oh, darn, now I'm getting off of the wrong exit. I need to die now. It doesn't really work that way. You panic and you make a mistake and you get chased down and the policeman says, why'd you run? Come on. You're under arrest now. We're going to take you in. Not, he ran. I'm going to blow his brains out. Shouldn't really work that way. Well, after the officer's arrest on Tuesday, North Charleston authorities said that they were following in the recent footsteps of police departments across the country in deciding to purchase body cameras for their department. The move was made in part to become more transparent to the South Carolina public unsettled by the shooting. It was also a bid to counter the public's increased appetite for filming the police, which again was illustrated Friday when two South California officers were placed on leave after video caught them beating a suspect. You may have seen that video as well, where there was a horseback chase through the deserts of California, and after the man was apprehended, he laid down on the ground with his hands behind his back, which is usually what you're ordered to do, and the policeman in the video then proceeded to, actually sheriff's deputies, I should say, in the video then proceeded to beat him by kicking him, and kicking him in very choice spots, I might add, going by the video. Spots with which nobody of a male tendency would want to be kicked in, we'll put it that way. And that's what happened in that video. And it just shows you the brutality which goes on. I don't know what it is psychologically that leads so many of these people in an official capacity to want to act that way. I don't understand. Sometimes officers don't want to be recorded, as was illustrated by Santana's comments. What's more, the Justice Department last month dinged Ferguson, Missouri police officers for having a hostile relationship with members of the public who are filming them, especially as tensions ran hot in the wake of the summer shooting death of a Ferguson, or rather shooting death of a black teen by a Ferguson officer. Of course, the Michael Brown shooting is what we're referring to. Now, I have seen some video of the protests which went on in Ferguson, which I will freely admit probably went a little bit too far. Okay, probably went a lot too far with the looting and everything. But when we're talking about walking down the street protesting, you can do that. And some would say, oh, you need a permit to protest. I would argue otherwise, but don't break the law because I tell you to. But what happens here is the people were walking down the street, and some of them had cameras, and some of them were pointing the cameras at the police, which they should do. And in this particular case, a policeman was shoving a AR-15 in the face of the cameraman and yelling at him to get back. Well, I'm not sure I understand this request, because you're walking towards me telling me to get back and pointing a fully loaded and very well outfitted, I might add, AR-15 right in my face. I'm not sure what you want here. Do you want me to back up, or why are you walking towards me pointing a gun at me? Leads to quite a few problems, doesn't it? You see, the police, I would say, probably gone a bit too far with the whole authority thing. With the we have a cool outfit and very expensive boots, with which we will kick your knees in. So we're the upperclassmen, you might say. We're the foot soldiers here. We're better than you, and that's really not at all the case. In fact, they are our employees. Well, this has prompted lawmakers in California and Colorado to propose legislation to protect those who are filming from being retaliated against by the police. Colorado's legislation allows payments of $15,000 to people intimidated by the police for filming them, and to people whose footage was illegally taken. The California proposed law says filming an officer is not automatically interfering with the officer's duties, although you would think this is just common sense. And I guess I'm glad in this case that there is some sort of law to show that, yes, you can film the police, but you'd think that this would just be something which everyone knows already and would just be protected under the federal constitution, under the First Amendment, because you're obviously not interfering with anybody's activities by standing 10 feet away and filming them. The public has the First Amendment right to record the police, although it's not unfettered and can be limited. I'm not sure how. Officers may order people to back away if they're interfering with police activity, for example. Well, the only way I can imagine I was interfering with police activity, let's say if I'm filming a traffic stop, is if I was shouting at the person in the car, don't tell him anything, don't tell him anything, don't tell him anything, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and generally interfering and actually getting in front of the officer and pointing my camera at him and saying, what are your thoughts on this traffic stop? Doing just the most obnoxious things possible. Then, yeah, you could say I was interfering with this particular investigation. But really, when it comes right down to it, standing 25 feet away and filming them is not interfering at all with police activity. You'd think that everyone would know that. Of course, there are IQ limits as well on who can be hired into police departments as well, so maybe that plays a bit of a part in it. Well, Bell Labs wants to get phones and sensors to play nice on 5G wireless. Now, you probably have heard of 4G or 3G, but 5G is a new thing that Bell Labs is working on for our internet, or rather mobile internet provider. Now, G just means generation. So 1G would be the old analog phones that we used back in the day, or you used because I was too young back in the day. And then 2G would be what we've been using for a while since the early 2000s. And then 3G is what most of us use now. And 4G is the latest one. It's the fourth generation of the cellular protocol. Well, 5G is the new iteration of the cellular protocol. And it's, it's sort of hoping to be much, much, much faster and also allowing for communication from device to device. So Murray Hill, or rather John Timmer says that from Murray Hill, New Jersey, saying, during my visit to Bell Labs, he says, I had the recent chance to talk with some of the people doing research on the next generation of networking technologies. And in this very, very excellent article, which is written by John Timmer, he interviews several people at Bell Labs, and he goes in sort of in depth on how this new Internet of Things is going to work. He says, whenever a device appears on existing networks, there's a lot of handshaking that needs to go on to establish a connection. What that means is the phone, let's say you're connecting to your router. Your phone will handshake with the router saying, the handshake literally is just the phone is connecting to the router and saying, hey, I'm here. And then the router will go to the phone and say, okay, you're here, I recognize you. That's the handshake. And then you have connection. So after handshake, you have connection. So that's what usually happens. Well, then a constant background synchronization traffic. So in the context of streaming music or downloading pictures, this ends up being a negligible part of the overall traffic. But minor devices and sensors are kind of bursty in that they appear on the network briefly to forward information and then disappear again in order to save power. In fact, in order to save power by limiting what they have to transmit, the folks over at Bell Labs are expecting that they'll ditch most of the handshaking and synchronization protocols. So in the future, we'll have much faster internet service, obviously, but we'll also have devices connecting to that internet service much faster. This might not sound like much, but think about it. A lot of phones will actually turn off their Wi-Fi in order to save power when it's in sleep mode. That happens to me. So I turn on my phone or wake it up, and it's not connected to the Wi-Fi immediately. This is very annoying for me if I have to get something in a hurry for the show. So this new service would eliminate that whole problem. So 5G internet is on the way, and it's going to allow for much more modular cellular internet, if that makes any sense at all. So 3D Robotics' new Solo drone is promising to make aerial videography much easier than it was before. Now, you see, it's actually illegal in the United States to use a drone for filming and then selling that film. At least some people interpret the law to mean that. So that would be flying a drone for commercial purposes, and you cannot do that. Well, 3D Robotics' new Solo drone promises to make aerial videography much easier. Unfortunately, it doesn't really make it much more legal. I wish it did. But with the Solo, according to TechCrunch, 3D Robotics is launching its most advanced consumer drone yet. It's a ready-to-fly quadricopter that combines everything the company has learned from its earlier products and those of its competitors into a single platform. With the Solo, the 3DR also offers a new level of customer support that's basically unrivaled in the industry. So unlike almost all of its competitors, the Solo can get video right away from any modern GoPro camera, starting with the Hero 3 Plus, and then streams it right to your phone or tablet with the help of the 3DR's new and optional 3-axis Solo gimbal. So this means now that if you already own a GoPro, you don't have to buy a special new camera mount or anything like that to fit into this particular drone. You can just affix it straight to the drone, and you're good to go. So the new drone launches only a week after 3DR's new largest competitor, DJI, launched the latest drone in its Phantom lineup. But while the new Phantom is a clear upgrade from its predecessors, the 3DR may just have leapfrogged it in a couple of areas. As 3DR Chief Revenue Officer Colin Gunn told the writer of the article, the company's focus while developing the Solo was to prioritize user experience. He wants the Solo to be great for pros and easy to fly for beginners as well, all with a focus on aerial photography. To do so, 3DR rewrote its old mobile apps to make them much easier to use, but it also built new smarts into both the drone and the controller. So you can mount any GoPro on it you wish, and you'll be good to go. You'll be flying already. So drones are very quickly becoming very popular. This is great for those of us who are hobbyists. I don't actually own a drone personally. I have flown several. They're very cool devices. I'm always excited whenever I get to use one because they're just so interesting, and they're just amazing to fly around. You can't believe how steady they are. I would love to put a camera on one of those and go downtown and get some awesome aerial shots of the Walnut Street Bridge. I mean, it'd just be so cool. But unfortunately, I can't actually really do that because there's, on the one hand, there are some city ordinances regarding drones. On the other hand, I would immediately post that footage on YouTube to share, and I would probably actually get a letter from the FAA if I did so, if I enabled ads, because then I'd be technically making money off of the footage I took with a drone, and flying a drone for commercial purposes is in fact a crime as it stands now, unless you get special permission from the FAA. So getting a license to do something implies that it's illegal to do so otherwise. So this means now that I have gotten permission to do something which would otherwise be illegal, which would be filming something with a drone for commercial purposes. Why is that, of all things, illegal? Because the action is the same, whether it's commercial or hobbyist. If I'm flying a drone with a camera mounted on it, and I just use that for fun, and I keep that footage myself and never show anybody and never sell the footage, then fine. But if I sell it, I sell a tape of it, now I'm committing a crime. I'm actually committing a federal crime, and I could be fined quite a lot of money for doing so. What sense does that make? We're hampering business in so many ways. Think of all the cool movies that could be made with drones. I mean, yeah, the cool factor is definitely there, but also think of the practicality and the convenience of having a drone drop a package for you in your front yard. Think of how awesome that would be. You get a text alert, your drone is on its way. You get another text alert, your drone has arrived. You get a text alert, your package has arrived at its destination, and it gives you GPS coordinates. And there you go. Now you have a drone which has delivered a package to you of something which could potentially be vital to you. Say you need drone delivery of your insulin. You have just run out of insulin, and you didn't think to buy more, but you can get it delivered to you from American Eagle insulin supplies, I don't know, and you get it delivered to your house in 30 minutes or less because you're going to run out soon. think of how convenient that would be, and also how potentially life-saving that would be, and how much stress that would take out of our everyday lives. The flying of drones for commercial purposes is no boogeyman. The commercial flying of drones is just something which really should have happened already. We should have had this since the mid-2000s. But unfortunately, regulators here in this country don't really seem to understand that regulation hampers growth. Regulation hampers innovation. Regulation hampers business. Regulation is not the answer to much of any problem. I can't think of any problem in the world that's ever been solved with regulation. They say, okay, but what about people who used machine guns like in the Valentine's Day Massacre? Well, I guarantee you could have done exactly the same thing in the Valentine's Day Massacre if you had a very quick finger and a semi-automatic, Chicago typewriter, which would be a Thompson submachine gun at the time with a 50-round drum magazine. I guarantee you the Valentine's Day Massacre could have occurred that way as well. So the argument is basically moot. There is nothing which has ever been solved with regulation that I am aware of. No giant, horrible catastrophe has been prevented by a form of regulation. Let's say pressure cookers are illegal to own now. And is that going to stop somebody from getting a pressure cooker from a thrift store? No. Is that going to stop somebody from illegally purchasing a pressure cooker on the black market? No. You see, these different items and regulations against them don't solve any problems at all. They just make life harder for regular people who just want to go about their day and be left alone. Because in the end, that's pretty much what most of everyone wants, is just to be left alone. I want to just be left alone. I love doing the show here. But in the end, when I leave the door, when I walk out the door and I'm going home, I just want to be left alone. I don't want people to drive up to me and be, hey, you're the guy on the radio. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But people walk up to you and go, hey, you're that guy. Come on. Okay. I'm happy to meet you, but I just want to go home, man. Come on. Long day. So I don't want to be harassed by the police. I don't want to get pulled over because I went 6 miles over the speed limit. Have I hurt anybody? No. Has anybody died as a result of this? No. Was anybody going to die as a result of this? No. What's the purpose in this? There is none. It's just a moneymaker. In fact, that's what most regulation in the end is. It's just a moneymaker. But it's not a moneymaker for business. It's not a moneymaker for the people who actually need money. It's a moneymaker for the people who regulate the people who need money. It's a moneymaker for those who sit in Congress. It's a moneymaker for the war machine. It's a moneymaker for the war effort. It's a moneymaker for the police offices. That's what it's a moneymaker for. It's not a moneymaker for GE. It's not a moneymaker for the small business next door that's trying to get itself going. Because the Americans with Disabilities Act has stopped him from opening his restaurant because he can't afford to get a ramp in there. They can't afford to lower his sinks. They can't afford to get a hand dryer that's lower than 10 feet, or lower than 5 feet, I should say. That's not helping anybody. That's just causing a bunch of problems. You see, regulation doesn't help anybody. It just hurts the local economy. It just hurts the free market. And it tries to sort of circumvent the free market process, which can be done in a sense, but it can't be defeated ultimately, because there's always going to be a free market. It's just not always going to be where you'd expect. It's not always going to be out in the open. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and more. Nuganomics.com with David Tullis is coming up in just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shallowford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Hot News Talk Radio, join Real Estate U for an hour of information, guests, and new ideas about the dynamic Chattanooga real estate investment market. Real Estate U, every Tuesday at 11 a.m. here on Hot News Talk Radio.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way!
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price and get your vehicle back on the road faster than you can say,
our customers come first. Hi, this is Charlie.
And I'm Tommy, owners of Rivermont Pure. We're here to serve you.
Rivermont Pure, the auto repair guys. Featuring ethanol-free fuel. Located across from Rivermont Elementary on Hickson Pike. Rivermont, Chattanooga. Rivermont Pure.
Rivermont Pure, that's where I've always gone to get my car serviced. My husband and I trust Charlie and Tommy. They always treat us right and give us a fair price. And they get the job done right the first time. Thank you, Rivermont Pure.
Call 485-3375. That's 485-3375.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Tulis.